Hi there, and welcome to Hyundai Power Products. My name is Adrian, and today we're going to be looking at this HY2000Si generator, and specifically the carburetor. So we're going to remove the carburetor, clean it and replace it. Now there are a few reasons why you may want to do this. Most commonly are water in the fuel, contamination in the fuel, or stale fuel, which can damage the carburetor. So we'll show you how to do that. So you're going to need to remove all the fuel from the generator before we do this, and there is a separate video on doing that, and I'll put a link in the description below. I'm just going to remove the remaining fuel out of the float bowl of the carburetor in case there's a little in there. There we are. So we loosen off the drain screw and it runs down through this pipe, and as you can see, out of the generator. So that's the fuel tank completely empty, and the carburetor completely empty, and we're ready now to remove the carburetor. So the carburetor itself is located here behind this rubber manifold, the air filter being here, rubber manifold, and the carburetor here with the silver coloured float bowl. So we need to remove this carburetor. So we're going to start by removing a couple of the pipes that are visible before we start. So I think the first thing we'll do is remove this little breather pipe here. So I'll squeeze the clip, pull the clip down out of the way, and just remove that little breather pipe, and I'll tuck it back out of the way. So you'll see two nuts, one here and one at the back, just tucked away out of sight. So we need to undo these two nuts. In fact, better with an open-ended spanner. We'll loosen them off. Just remove the two nuts. So that's the front one. I'm probably going to need to get a little socket to get into the back one, which is tucked around here. Let me just see if I can get to it. Yeah, it's going to have to be a socket for that one. So yeah, just using my little ratchet, just get in behind. Loosen it so far with a socket. And I'll just remove the rear nut with my fingers the rest of the way. Obviously it's virtually impossible for me to show you this. There's the rear nut removed, and now this manifold, as you can see, will come away from the carburetor itself. So having taken the nuts off the manifold, I'm going to remove the airbox. So we undo this screw here on the front and remove it. We can just pull the airbox cover away. If we slide it to the right hand side, the cover will come out, and we can remove the air filter. Now inside the airbox you will see an 8mm nut. So again, using a socket, I'll just remove this nut, or bolt I should say. Okay, that's that one out of the way. And there's one around this side. I'll bring you around. There's a little bolt here holding the airbox to the engine. So again, 8mm, little socket. I'll just undo that one. And that'll loosen up the airbox. So having removed the two bolts, we can now twist the airbox down and out of the way, giving us much better access to the carburetor here. So you'll see a little gasket. We just need to carefully take the gasket away, and we'll keep that safe. So on many machines you'll find at this point you can slide the carburetor out in this direction, off the studs, withdraw it from the machine, undo the pipes and cables, and remove the carburetor. On this machine there isn't room to get it out, so we're going to have to remove the two studs. So to remove these studs, we're going to need a pair of M6 nuts. So I actually have some here. So what I'll do is wind one nut on first, then a second nut, just come off the end of the wind them on fully so that they're fully enclosed. Then with a pair of 10mm spanners I can lock the inner nut and tighten the two nuts together. So now that the two nuts are locked together, I can undo the inner nut closest to the carburetor, and as you can see, this is unscrewing the carburetor stud from the engine. Okay, so that's the one of the carburetor studs removed. So I'll undo the two nuts now, remove them from this stud and put the two nuts back on the inner stud. So exactly the same method. First nut on, second nut on. I'll lock the two together. Come on. Lock the two nuts together, and then, as you saw me do with the front one, there we go, I can undo the rear of the two studs. That's the second stud fully unscrewed now. I should be able to pull the carburetor out, remove the stud. Now there may be some gaskets behind the carburetor which could fall, so just pay attention. The carburetor will now come down to this position here, and we can now disconnect the choke. So before we disconnect the choke cable, we just need to pay attention to how much cable is sticking out of the brass clamp here. In this case it's about 2.5 to 3mm, so that's the point we'll put it back to at a later stage. So yeah, I'll hold the brass part of the little clamp here with an 8mm spanner and just undo the little clamp screw on the top, a few turns, and as you can see the choke cable will come out. So with the end of the cable released, you can undo this screw here, and remove it completely with this little clamp, and that's released the choke cable from the carburetor. So coming in the back of the carburetor, in this location here, you'll see the little silver clamp. So we need to just pinch the end of the silver clamp. Let me get it in a better position for you to see. Can you see it better there? Yes, you can. Pinch the end, the two little tangs with the long nose pliers. Pull the clamp back. Keeps dropping out of your view. Pull the clamp back out of the way. Back up the pipe. And then tease the fuel pipe away from the carburetor. Here we come. Okay, that's the fuel pipe off, and that will allow me to bring the carburetor out as a complete unit, and the only thing left attaching it to the generator is the control cable for the little stepper motor on the top. So we need to remove this black plastic unit completely. So if we look at the carburetor, you'll see these two spacers here with the grooves in them, one top, one bottom, and a screw in the top of each. So taking the screwdriver, we can undo the two screws. That's one. And I'll hold the unit in place. That's one screw out. That's the second screw out. we need to take care not to lose this little plastic yoke here. So I'm going to hold the plastic yoke down and keep the plastic yoke on the top with its little spring here. It's very easy for that spring to shoot off if you don't hold this part on the carburetor. So having disconnected the carburetor, I'll just pull these two little spacers out. We'll keep those safe. And I'm just going to pull this little yoke out of the top here. So to keep this spring and yoke safe, I'm just going to turn the spring to unhook the little clasp off the top. Then I'm going to pull the yoke and spring out together. So there we are. That's the little yoke and spring, and I'll keep that safe as well. So, having completely disconnected the carburetor from the generator, I think we'll take it to the bench and start cleaning the carburetor. So, we need to start stripping this carburetor down for cleaning. So the first thing we're going to do is undo the bolt on the bottom and remove the float bowl. And I'm just going to pay attention to the direction of this drain pipe. And I can see, with the fuel pipe on this side, that the drain pipe is up at an angle of approximately 45 degrees. So yeah, that's the way I'll put it back when I replace it. So 10mm spanner, I'll just loosen off the little bolt on the bottom. Okay, and there is a little gasket under here, so we mustn't lose that. I'll just unscrew the bolt. I'll just pull this little gasket off the bottom here. And we'll put the bolt and the gasket safe in my little pot. So now we can just pull the float bowl away, and you'll see that a little O-ring has come with it. So we'll take care not to lose the O-ring. So I'll just gently take it away from the little pot where it's a little bit stuck. Okay, so there's the O-ring and the float bowl, so we'll put those to one side. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the float itself. You can see a little pin here, a little hinge pin. I'll pop the pin out, put that safe, and I can withdraw the float, and the little needle has come away. I don't know whether you can see, but the little needle sits on this tag here when it's in position. So again, I'll put those safe in my little pot. So I'm just going to gently remove this gasket that's come away with it. And as you can see, the gasket has its large flange facing down towards the float bowl. So again, I'll put that to one side safe. The next thing we need to do is to remove the jets. So we'll remove the small jet from the side of the carburetor first. There we are. A little bit of dirt came out with that. So that's the first or main primary jet removed. We'll put that in a little pot for cleaning. And then up inside, here we go, we can remove the emulsion tube and jet that's inside this tube here. Okay, nearly there. Keep going. There we are. As you can see, it's nearly out. Just remove the whole thing as one. So on this particular carb, the emulsion tube is one piece here, and the main jet was the little piece in the outside. Sometimes these are in two pieces. You'll have an emulsion tube and a main jet both screwed up inside. So again, we'll put that in a little pot ready for cleaning. So on the top of the carburetor here, you'll see the idle jet. We can unscrew that. Again, and remove the idle jet. Again, we'll put that to one side ready for cleaning. So for cleaning the carburetor, the ideal scenario would be an ultrasonic cleaning tank. And all of these components could go into an ultrasonic cleaning tank and be cleaned thoroughly. Without an ultrasonic cleaning tank, which I doubt very many of you have, you would need to use an aerosol can of carburetor cleaner, and that's probably available from most motor factors. So using your carburetor cleaner, we would squirt carburetor cleaner on every surface inside the carburetor, up every hole possible, all the little jets, all the little passageways, carburetor cleaner everywhere you can imagine, up where the idle jet came from, through the bore of the carburetor, in all these little holes, everywhere you can see a little hole or an entryway into the carburetor, we could blow out with the carburetor cleaner. So having cleaned it out with carburetor cleaner, we then take a compressed air line or a can of compressed air and again blow out every passageway in the carburetor to make sure everything has got every drop of carburetor cleaner and any debris removed. So that would be for the main body of the carb itself. So then we'd move on to all the small jets and small components. Again, we could blow them all out with a compressed air, every single piece, taking care that we get every single little hole is clear and has been sprayed with compressed air to get any loose debris out. And again, carburetor cleaner in an aerosol can, blow through every single little hole. We clear them all out. Pay particular attention to the emulsion tube. Now it's got a hole right down through the middle, which again we'd blow it with compressed air first and carburetor cleaner, and it's got an assortment of very small holes in the outside here which you can see right through. So just take great care that every one of these holes is unblocked and there's no residue, debris or varnish effect from stale fuel in any of the holes. So same scenario for every component. Let me just get the little main jet. The little main jet, same treatment. The little float needle. Pay attention to the end of the float needle. There's a little rubber cone on the end. Make sure that's spotlessly clean as well. So once you've got every one of the components clean, give everything a final blowout everywhere possible, just to make sure we've got no foreign matter in there whatsoever, and we can start the reassembly. So reverse order of the way we took it apart. We'll pop the idle jet back into that hole. Screw it back in clockwise. Back in fully home with the idle jet. So back in with the emulsion tube with the thick end and the threaded end outwards. Okay. And we need to screw this fully home back into the tube in the bottom of the carburetor. It's got a fair way to go, this. Okay, we must be nearly there now. There we go. Okay, that's fully home. And again, we'll carefully refit the main jet. Just starting it with our fingers. We'll screw it in. And just carefully tighten it down. Okay. Now it's worth at this point, in case you've raised any small bits of debris from the end of the screwdriver in the slot, giving it another blow all the way through everywhere again, just to double check. And now we're ready to refit the float. When we're refitting the float, we need to attach the little needle back onto the little tab. Okay. Now that needle needs to fit up inside that brass hole. Where are we? Let me just point it out. Up inside this brass hole in the carburetor. So I'll just carefully align the two, let the needle go up the brass hole and put the float into its approximate position. I can hold it there. I need to get the little pivot pin now. Okay, and refit the little pivot pin, lining up the hole in the float. There we are. That's the little float pivot pin back in, and the float and needle is captivated. So a little test for this float would be to blow in through the inlet where the fuel comes into the carb. And with the carburetor this way up, the float is pushing down with gravity and sealing off the entrance into the float bowl. So you shouldn't be able to blow through it with the carb this way up. Then if you turn the carb the other way, the float will fall down under gravity and you should be able to blow through here freely. Okay, that's just a little test. So the next thing we need to do is to refit the little O-ring into this groove in the carburetor. We're just going to carefully offer it up into position and push the little O-ring into this groove, making sure that it's properly located all the way round. There we are, and we can refit the float bowl. So we'll place it on top, we'll set its angle correct as it was before, like that, at 45 degrees, and we can refit the little washer and bolt into the bottom. I'll screw it in by hand so far. And then finally tighten the float bowl up. With the spanner, and that's the carburetor cleaned. So having cleaned the carburetor, you need to put it all back together, and it's the exact reverse procedure to the way we took it apart. Okay, so first thing we need to do is put the little shoe back in. So put the spring in place. Put the little shoe back in the hole, tuck the spring back underneath. So that's the little shoe in place, and as you'll see, the little slot in the shoe is on the center line. You can put it in the wrong way round, but it's on the center line of the rotation. Yeah, okay. So we'll take our two spacers, I'll pop those back in the top of the carb. We need to put the bridge back on again, and what you'll notice is that the little boss or little output drive shaft of the stepper motor doesn't line up with the shoe, so you need to rotate the shoe to get them in line, just until the motor will slip into the little shoe. Okay, and then we'll pop the plate on the top onto the little rebates on the spacers, and we can refit the two screws. So a little wriggle and a jiggle here to get the screws into place. There's that one and that one, and the final little job for this bit. I'll just loosely screw down the two screws first, just to make sure we're all in line, not quite on that little seat there, as you can see. So a little bit of a loosen off again. There we are, that's down properly. That's why I did them up just loosely first. So I'll just have a quick look about, everything looks good. Tighten down firmly on the two screws. Okay, and I can see that that throttle is operating correctly. That's good. So we're doing reverse procedure. So the next job is going to be to put the fuel pipe back on. So much as we took it off, I'll just put the carb somewhere near inside here, refit the fuel pipe, pushing it right down on. Let me see if I can show you that. Not quite on. Okay, the fuel pipe is now fully on, so I need to replace the little clip. Again, long nose pliers. Bit fiddly this, because you're working down in the hole. And even more so because I'm trying to show you what I'm doing. I'll have to do it by getting in the way, I'm afraid. Nearly there. A little bit more. Okay, and that's the fuel clip there back in position. So I actually removed the airbox earlier completely to give myself a bit more room. So if you've done the same, so at this point you need to just pop the airbox back into position. So I've tucked the carb back out the way. I'll just bring the airbox back into its rough position there. So I'm just going to put the little bracket back on. You'll see it's got a little heel here which drops into a slot, and you can just start the screw. Okay, that's just in a turn or two. Now we need to take the choke cable and thread it through. Difficult for me to show this. Okay, thread it through the little bracket, pulling it completely through against this stop. I'm just holding the end of the cable. I can do up the screw. Oops. Okay, that's the choke cable sheath connected. So now I'll feed the end of the choke wire itself back through the little bracket. I'll just nip it into position. Okay, it's sticking out the same amount as it was originally. So same as we did before. I'll just hold the brass part with an 8mm spanner and tighten the choke cable into position. So I'm holding the gasket on the back in the right position, and I'll just loosely fit one stud, the rear stud, through, right through the carburetor, and I'm just going to make sure that when the stud comes through the back of the carb, which is there, it's passing through the little hole in the gasket. It is. Okay. Then I'll take the second stud, do exactly the same. The short thread goes towards the engine. So through the hole, line up the gasket. Okay. So now I'm going to offer the carburetor back up into its home position and screw the studs back into the engine block. So I've just had a final check that the gaskets are in place behind the carburetor, which they are. I've tightened the rear stud, opposite method to the way we loosened them earlier on. Here we are. So that's that one tight as well. Undo my two little 6mm nuts. Okay. That's the carb back in position. So we need the little gasket now. So with the gasket in position, I can put the little manifold back on. I'll replace the two nuts, one front and one back. Again, you won't be able to see the back one. It's here somewhere. Can't see it myself. I'm having to go on feel for this. There we go. Okay, so we can tighten the manifold up now that we've got both nuts on. Let's just get it a bit tighter. It's a 10mm socket for this one, spanner I should say, and one round the back. You can see it now. That's that one tight. So I've tucked this pipe around the front just to keep it out of my way while I was working in that area. So I'll bring this pipe back and reconnect this pipe. There we go. So I need to bolt the airbox back into position now. So now I need to bolt the airbox back into position. So I'll just line the bolt up in the hole there at the back. I'll just get that one started. The one in the side of the airbox as well. I might have to move the airbox a little bit around a bit to get the bolt started. So I've just loosely put in the bolt from the engine side of the box. I'll just do that one up with an 8mm spanner. That one done up. Finish this one off. And that's that one done up. Air filter back in now with a cut off corner, top right. Make sure the air filter is completely sat into its little box. Yep. Same idea with the cover, with the cut out, top right. Slide it in to position, locate it, in with a little screw, I didn't show myself removing this earlier on. I took it off the air filter, off the carburetor I should say. I've just replaced the little drain pipe and tuck it back out through the hole in the case. Okay, so a quick visual inspection now to make sure that there's nothing untoward. Everything looks good. I'll just make sure that fuel drain is tight, which it is. And that's the carburetor refitted. So I refilled the fuel tank with fuel, turned the fuel tap on, and I've left it sit for 5 minutes just to see if there's any signs of a fuel leak, anything like that. Everything seems fine. So at this point I can replace the side cover. Just let it pop into its little poppers. There we are. Do up the 2 screws. Should you need any of the parts that I've been using today, gaskets or the carburetor itself, all the parts are available from our parts department. Well, I do hope you found this demonstration useful. For more information on this or any of our other products, visit www.hyundaipowerproducts.co.uk. I've been Adrian, and thank you for watching.